hello everyone. I know that we have then policy because I see peace around the room. Like Tatiana, you have a P there also. Yeah, so we have policy, we have civil society, academia. Okay, that's great. That's perfect.
Well, P was for policy and public entity, as I saw.
And public entity.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Perfect. That's great. So since we are 10, so maybe we can go around and present ourselves, the people that want to do that before starting. What do you think? So maybe I can start. My name is Jimena. I'm part of the Mission Implementation Platform team, so the MIP for ADAPT. The team is working on implementing the EU Mission Adaptation. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Jorge, would you like to say some words?
Okay, pues just present me very briefly. I'm Jorge Pat. I work at the NALIAN Spanish Research Center, and I am working in the Climate Europe 2 project, and I have some experience developing climate services in different sectors. So
nice, thank you, Jorge. Tatiana, would you like to go next?
Hello, everybody. My name is Tatiana Gomez. I work as industrial engineer in Cabildo of Gran Canaria, one of the public entity here in the Canary Island, and we are involved in a lot of projects about adaptation here in the island. So I find this is going to be really interesting, I guess.
Yes, let's hope. The idea is to discuss a bit further. So then I'm going in order in how I see you, but feel free to unmute and continue. Zachary? I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Zachary, and I am I work at Climate Analytics on the stakeholder engagement team. So we're involved right now with creating climate service tools and dashboards, and particularly what I'm focused on is getting stakeholder input on how to best create them.
Thank you, Zacarias. Marina?
Hi, I'm Marina Baldissera Pacchetti. I work at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center and at UCL in the UK. Together with Jorge, I work in Climate Europe 2 and work package 1 on standardization. My background is mostly academic and on quality of climate information for policy.
Great, thank you. Miranda, I'm sorry if I mispronounce any names.
No worries. My name is Mirjana. I come from Serbia, from Center for the Promotion of Science, and I also work with Marina and Jorge on Climate Europe 2, but in the working package 6 for community engagement.
Great, thank you. Freya, would you like to say some words? We cannot hear you, or it's just me. No, we cannot hear you. Maybe if you want to use the chat, you want to send us, if not on the chat, great. Great, then I see, well, technical support now. Uros, are you there? Yes. No, we can.
Uros, we cannot hear you.
Well, this is part of being online, right? Technical issues. Urus, if you want to send through the chat, would be great so that we can know who you are a bit more. Then Rose.
I hope you can hear okay. The connection doesn't seem too great. Yes. I'm Rose Woolley, office in the and I've been working on a project called Aspect, which is working with the EU missions. It's one of the partner organisations. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, nice. Thank you, Rose. Then Klaus.
Yeah, hi, I'm Klaus. I work in Sweden at the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute, and I'm a member in Climate Europe 2, working in Work Package 2 on standardization for data formats and uncertainty.
Thank you. And then I have Amir. I don't know if you are there. But well, it looks like you're from WMO. I can see on your name. Thank you, Urus, for sharing on the chat. So then, Amir, let us know whenever you want to jump in. Of course, you can unmute and present yourself. But well, besides that, thank you all for attending today. We have a very small presentation that maybe, Jorge, should I share screen and we can talk through together. In these slides, you will also see the questions that we will be discussing in a minute. So, well, you already heard about the mission, so I will not bore you with that. And the definition, Jorge, I don't know if you want to go through this again, the definition of the climate service according to, well, the Climate Europe 2 working definition.
Okay, go. I can present it. There is still ongoing debate of this, but the definition that we arrange as climate service are the provision of climate information in such a way as to assist decision-making by individuals and organizations. The service component involves appropriate engagement and effective access mechanisms and responsiveness to user needs. So this is the definition that we are reading in our internal workshops.
Great. And then we put together some examples. Jorge, would you like to go through this one that you?
Okay, just an example of a climate service that we are internally we are developing in an Horizon Europe project, in the Reach Out project. Is the thermal assessment tool, and what provides are interactive panels to visualize and understand the heat wave phenomenon. On the left, there is a plot that shows the duration and the intensity, the degrees in a certain area, showing the historical. And on the right of the screen, you can see the estimated evolution of these different events. The red ones, orange ones, and light orange are different kinds of alerts, warnings defined by the legal procedures. So that part shows the evolution of these events estimated in the coming decades. So this is just an example of how extracting information and processing information from climate databases and trying to assist decisions related to heat waves.
Thank you, Jorge. Then we have also other two examples, but because of time, I think maybe we can just run through them quickly. This is, many of you may already know, the Copernicus Emergency Management Service. Again, it's providing, it's not only just about climate impacts, but also other weather-related aspects. And also, I think that they have also human-related risks. So yes, it's online, it's available. We can share links for you. And another example is an international one. So there's countries that already have in place like systems for generating risk maps. And this is going more into adaptation, right? So this, in this case, this is Argentina. This is a development with the UNDP, and they have a hazard map and then vulnerability and exposure map, and together they generate the risk map in order to inform policy and also private sectors on the upcoming, well, the risks that are depending on the period that you select on the maps. Gives you short-term, long-term impacts. So then this is a space for you rather than for us, rather than for Jorge and for me. So the main thing is like to discuss these questions and also get to know also your experiences, right? So what are your good and your bad experiences with climate services? Why climate services, is important to implement adaptation at local and regional level, and what are the main requirements, suggestions, advice you wish to communicate to climate service providers, and to what extent can guidelines and standards enable the uptake of climate services to support climate adaptation. So in this regard, if you like, we can go through the first question. So what are your good and your bad experiences with climate services? I don't know, any examples you want to share with us, or again, experience that you have been having with climate services on your different capacities. Yes.
Okay, so my is a very limited perspective because I only sort of recently moved a little bit more from the academic to the, let's say, operational side of climate information and its application to climate services. But and so I'm not obviously like not really speaking from someone that is using this information. So it's really yeah, just take it with a grain of salt. But I have been involved in some of the sort of capacity building and instruction workshops from the ECMWS, the C3S section, and I found those like extremely useful. But it's what I found sort of missing there was really having discussions that are targeted to the kind of user, or like the background expertise of the different participants, because as I was sort of working or like sort of joining this program with different people, it was pretty clear that we all had maybe very different perspectives, but especially very different background knowledge that was affecting how we were engaging with this sort of capacity building in the context of this climate service that Copernicus is providing. So, for example, I'm somewhat expert in uncertainty and uncertainty quantification and communication, and I found that the topic was really not communicated well enough, or not discussed well enough. But I realized that maybe for some people that might be enough, or not, or just an introductory topic to how we communicate information through a particular service. This was a couple of years ago, though, so I'm not super sure if they've changed. I know C3S has a really interesting quality management service called quality management setting called QAC, where they do a quality assurance of their data, which is great. So yeah, that's kind of my ramble. Thanks.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you so much for that. So things that I heard from your intervention is that the capacity building first, right? You mentioned the quality assurance, and yeah, well, how do we communicate at the end the information? So those are like, right, like the key 3 points.
How we tailor it to the different, right? Because it obviously it changes, but there are trade-offs between like making it tailored enough and reaching a broad enough audience, which is something that we've been struggling a lot, you know, like what is the right level of generality for these kind of things.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, totally. I don't know if anyone wants to reflect, react, or add more aspects into this? Feel free to unmute. Or if you want to share any other experiences, good or bad, with climate services.
I would say right now I'm looking into a lot of climate services, and I think sometimes they can be quite, some of them are very good at being simple enough for the average user, but some of them I think are too ambitious, and it gets just confusing, even with like explainer modules. I think for most people, they don't really actually want to go through and learn how to use it. They just want it to be intuitive enough to just use it without having to learn how to use it, if that makes sense. And that's one problem I've come across with some of the climate services, is they're either too much information at once, or they're too difficult to understand. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Zachary. Yes, and I think it connects very nicely with what Marina was also saying, right? In terms of tailor the communication to the audience and these trade-offs. And yes, you have to make it intuitive, and also, right, like this trade-off that Marina was mentioning, and yeah, the fact of not having too much information or too difficult to understand. Great question, Marina. So feel free, Marina, to unmute yourself and yeah.
Yeah, I was just reacting to what Zachary was saying. It's, yeah, you know, how do we decide how much information is enough information, and you're not giving the user too simple information, or yeah, I don't know if you have especially since you've been doing with, like, you know, engagement, if you have any reflections on that, because I wonder, you know, there are dangers to oversimplifying things, as well as dangers to overcomplicating things. How do we find this balance, and who decides the balance?
I think that's a really good question that, yeah, I think is still really difficult to answer. In my experience, it seems like what we found is, or what we're coming across, is that simpler is always better for a general audience. Like, most academic people and technical people tend to overcomplicate things, even if they think it's simple, like to go even simpler. And then one thing I've come across is sometimes there will be services that have like basic services for the general audience, and then those who want more information, there's like a separate kind of portal for more advanced users, which I think is a good practice. But yeah, I think it also really depends, and it's not so easy. Like, I guess each service is its own case. So yeah.
So basically you're saying that it will depend on the audience and on the content that you are showing?
Yeah, I think so. I think if it's a general audience, then very simple, like very minimal. And then for more specific audiences, that's when you have greater information, I would say.
Right. I take notes of this general, you know, like the overall thoughts, so that we can then think about what do we want to report back when we are back in plenary. Anyone else would like to comment, react, or share your experience with climate services? Jorge, would you like to then go through the next question?
No, I would like to know, being honest, I would like to know the vision from the users, let's say, that we have in the panel. So I will encourage, I will ask them if they want to share. If you want, maybe I can share my bad experience that are maybe from the an academic perspective, no, from the demand, from the offer side. So maybe it would be great if we have an opinion from the users, no, if they reflect. No. Or if not, we can maybe move to the next one if there is no more reactions.
Okay. So the next question is, why are climate services important to implement adaptation at local and regional levels? And what are the main requirements, suggestions, advice you wish to communicate to the climate service providers? I can copy the question on the chat so that everyone has the question at hand. There we go. Also, I will share with all of you the links to the examples that we showed in case you to look at them later. So yeah, maybe here there's two questions, right? in one. Maybe it would be good to, as Jorge was mentioning, right, to hear also from the users, why do you think that is important to implement why are climate services important for implementing adaptation at a local and regional level?
From my point of view, and I think that is really important in order to know which are exactly the weather in some municipalities. For example, here in Gran Canaria, we are the coordinator of Covenant of Mayors, and we have made the all SECAP documents to our 21 municipalities, and we have found a lot of problems in order to develop the part of adaptation, because we don't have exactly the which is the temperature in one of the municipalities. We have only here in Gran Canaria 10, I guess, weather stations, and we need to extrapolate the information from one different municipality to another. And I think that is really important to go exactly which are the weather conditions and what's happening in that specific territory, that anything that is in general. So I truly believe that it's very important that the climate services need to arrive. But I trying to translate it into into English the word, but I'm not so sure. No, I don't get the exact word in English to the municipality. In fact, well. Yeah, we have found a lot of problems with that, and in Gran Canaria in general too.
Thank you, Tatiana. No, yeah, you were very, was very clear, your English, so don't worry about that. And yes, right, so you are, let me see if I'm understanding correctly what you're saying. You're saying that it's important to get this information in order to be able to develop adaptation measures, right? And like develop the plan on adaptation so that then you can implement, right?
Yes, in that specific territory, because here in Gran Canaria, we have a different weather condition depending on where you are. If you are in the north, in the south of the island, in the center of the island, so it's really different. And it's quite difficult to develop some kind of adaptation measures in each of our municipalities, because we don't have exactly the weather information of that municipality. So that's why I think that is really important in the adaptation at local levels, the climate services. I suppose that it's quite difficult to have a climate services from a specific territory, as Gran Canaria, for example, or an island. But I know that, for example, in the Midland or in the rest of Europe, there are more information that we can find here for our territory. So I don't know if it happens, if the same happens in another islands or extra territories of the Europe.
Thank you for the comment, Tatiana. If I have understood you well, what you are commenting is a problem of the resolution. No? You need a higher resolution for addressing climate adaptation at local level. That is really where we play the match of local adaptation. And I totally agree. It's always desirable, and especially in regions like Gran Canaria, in areas like Gran Canaria, that is very mountainous, very complicated. And I don't know if you have tried it or you have worked with any kind of product, maybe, or any climate service, maybe based on a I don't know if in a regionalization or in a reanalysis or something, and if you can tell us if that is not working for your area, maybe, or maybe it's not providing the needed resolution, and still there is a lack of resolution for you to implement adaptation, if I have understood you well, or if you are still working on that. I don't know if you can comment on that.
I know that the Canary government are working in develop some kind of tools in order to study better the weather in the different situation of Canary Island, because we are 8 islands and each island has its specific a particular weather. So maybe I'm not so sure if I'm explaining so so good, but as I try to explain is that I think that it's really important to have for example, here in Las Palmas, which is the historical weather in this municipality, and what's happening, for example, in Mogan, that is in the south of the island, or in Teror, that is in the center of the island. We don't have that kind of indicators, maybe it's the name, or the information exactly what's happening in that kind of territories. I know that there is some tools that they are developing, maybe they are still working on it, and maybe we will find some more information, and we have a specific information of this matter in a few years. But well, this is what we have experienced these past years, developing the SECAPS document here in Gran Canaria.
Thank you very much for elaborating on this, commenting on this. We have a question also in the chat. Ximena, do you want me to read it or react to it? It's a question from Uros that I think that his microphone is not working very well. So, and the comment is that without climate services, adaptation is a kind of gambling. You could spend your scarce resources so that you actually worsen the situation. For example, in Serbia, according to model projection, we will have increasing precipitation in the next few decades, but that things will turn on, and Serbia will towards dry climate. That is important info if you want to build hydro capital such as dams, channels, and stuff. Okay, thank you, Yunus, for the comment. I see a lot of interesting points in it. If I may firstly react from it, is the gambling that you comment. We have been talking in previous session about a project called Bingo, that is about how sometimes when we don't have information, we are really gambling if we don't know what are the possibility of the different balls to go out. So I totally agree with the sample that you are providing. And regarding this idea of long term, and that sometimes the signal during the first decades can be one direction and the other changing, I think that is very, very interesting. I don't know the particularities of Serbia, but I have seen this in other regions, and it's a very complex a scenario to adapt, no? How you adapt to one trend in the short term and then to in the long term in others, no? Especially when we don't know exactly in which scenario are we going to be in several decades. So I totally agree with your comments and how difficult is this and how complex and how elaborated should be the climate service to address all this. I don't know if you, Ximena, or others want to comment on this or react.
No, I think you said everything, Jorge. I think that it's important to also connect with what Tatiana was saying as well, right? At the beginning, it's important to the climate services to be able to adapt. So it's kind of the same thing, right? If you don't have this information, it's difficult to develop. And as here Uros is saying, right, it ends up in kind of a gambling. If you don't have this information, you cannot start thinking about the adaptation measures to develop, right? So it links very nicely. And in that sense, well, we have a new comment here on the chat from Marina. I would argue that even with climate services, there is some gambling involved given the uncertainty of regional projections. Yes, yeah, that's true. There's still always a lot of uncertainty, but yeah, at least you get reduced when you have the information. Yeah, it's all about reducing uncertainty. Yes, Uros, totally. I think that you all bring a very important aspect, and here I think that we can link to the second part of the question, that is, what are the main requirements or suggestions that you wish to communicate to climate service providers? Because I think that it links nicely, right, to all the things that you were saying. So it is important, it reduces uncertainty, it will enable to think about adaptation measures. So then what suggestions or advice would you like to propose to climate service providers in order to be able to do all of this, right? Like to develop the adaptation measures, to reduce the uncertainty and all the things that you were saying, that, okay, climate services are important for all that. So then what do we want to suggest to these providers of climate services?
I don't know if there's any comment. No, Marina's hand is raised. Marina, please go ahead.
I will try. I mean, just commenting on what Uros was saying about uncertainty and reducing uncertainty. I think it is at least like I'm a sort of philosopher / social scientist by training, but with a background in physics. So in a lot of the communities that I work in and with, I see a lot of emphasis on uncertainty reduction. But if you look at sort of the approaches of decision-making under uncertainty and sort of a lot of the social science work that has been done on this topic, it's also a lot about managing uncertainty and how can we make decisions that we are, like, let's say, like least regret, given that there is this gambling involved in these kind of circumstances. And I think like one of the things that I would like to see more is exactly like this, the awareness of this, what is called in some of the research literature, like bottom-up approach to decision making, where I think like the needs of the community and the sort of social and political values are put first, or are put like very much in the foreground. That's something, you know, that we heard also this morning in the opening panel, when people were saying like, look, actually climate data is some of the best data that we have, but one of the key and most arguably like most difficult bits is how do we integrate it within other decision-making framework, within governance, and these kind of things, right? Because we have information that is uncertain, and it has to kind of fit within our value systems and our governance systems and our priorities, and I would like to see more work on that.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you very much. I totally agree with your comments. I have little to add to that. Of course, we are always considering this, and I agree in the vision that is how we manage the uncertainty in the different decision frameworks where we try to inform some way. I don't know if we have other questions or any other reactions to this third question that is maybe the most open. Here we are asking for requirements, suggestions, any advice. I don't know if we are on time or we have, Ximena, are we on time or do we have still time to...
That is a great question. I was thinking the same thing, but maybe in the meantime, while you think about other suggestions, I completely agree, Marina, with the bottom-up aspect, right, of climate services. In general, is nowadays, I think that is very, as you were saying, right, like top down, but there is an aspect to consider, okay, how do we integrate other actors that, for example, the users, right? And here I link with Zachary's comment earlier, like depending on the audience, then it can also be thought about, like we can also think about different bottom-up approaches in order to integrate the audience that is the main audience using the service into the development of the system, for example, right? So in that sense, I think that totally, there is a lot yet to be integrated, and at the end of the day, can also address, like increase the usability of climate services as well, right? So yeah, thank you for that, Marina. And in case we have time, I will put on the chat the last question as well, in case someone wants to also mention some other things. Before reading the last question, Marina says on the chat, it is also a question of who, well, I don't know how to pronounce that. My English suddenly is not...
Yeah, it's like what they were mentioning this morning, haute couture versus pret-à-porter, sorry, they auto-corrected me, right? So again, like that's something that I have encountered with climate service providers, like saying, okay, so like if we want to have something that's tailored and very bottom up, we are like, can we actually do that? Do we have the resources? Is it scalable? If it's not scalable, is it worth doing, right? So there are, again, trade-offs that are really hard to navigate. And I haven't really seen much answers to that at all. Maybe you do, but I really have been struggling with that.
Thank you for that. Well, then the last question is, to what extent can guidelines and standards enable the uptake of climate services to support climate adaptation? Yeah, I mean, I think that it links very nicely with what Marina was putting forward. So do you think that maybe, guidelines and other standards can help on this, for example, these suggestions, or how can we make sure that climate services are taken by the different users in order to support the climate adaptation process? I don't know, Jorge, if you want to mention anything on this last question.
Yes, thank you. I think we have a previous session on standards and in one of the breakout rooms, and we talk about how diverse standards are. No? The standards can be in some way help to define the best practices internally for climate services, and also can help in some way of how we use the climate information, how we implement how we extract information from climate services, and in general we have a very diverse functions for standards. I've been part of some of the norms trying to standardize how we approach climate change adaptation, how we develop risk assessment in the ISO committees, the ISO 1490 families. And in some way, we have a very internal discussions about how we propose an approach for approaching adaptation or for performing risk assessment and this way, and provide let's say a framework. And the standards are there, are available. But I would like to mention that maybe when we move to the municipalities, as Tatiana said, then the particularities of and the interests and the objectives of the different very local level plays a very important and crucial role. No, it's more about, sometimes it's really about what are we targeting in that particular region, sector, activity, etc. And how what is the particular challenge that we want to solve in that area. So maybe I think here again that the vision from the end user is very valuable. If they can provide a little about something, if they think that they can obtain some value from the standards or from guidelines or something, I think they can provide very interesting insights in that regard. Uros is commenting on the chat, like guidelines can for sure improve climate services on the supply side. And on the demand side, I think the main factor is perception of climate-associated interaction by wider population. Climate service producers will probably do some marketing campaigns, maybe to play on card of fear. Okay, thank you for the comment, Uros. I don't really understand the last sentence. I don't know if Ximena, maybe you can interpret it, but on the other ones, I completely agree that if I have understood well, if we can in some way develop standardized climate services that could increase the perception and the perception that the whole society have about climate services. No? If we can assure that we are developing them according to a standardized procedure, and then maybe we can move to marketing campaigns with the marketing commercial saying, okay, this is approved by the climate service standard or something like that. Maybe I think that's the comment from Uros, and I would like to see that scenario. I don't know if you want to, or if somebody wants to comment on this. Because I think we have a call to go back to the general, the plenary assembly.
Yes, we can already, as soon as we are ready, we can go to the plenary. Yes, it's maximum, this record group is maximum until 4, but yeah, we should go before, so yeah. I just checked, that's why. Thank you, the technical support, for letting us know. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to comment or reflect on anything before we move to the plenary. Also, in terms of Uro's comment, I think that the maybe to play on card of fear, I hope Uros that I am understanding correctly. I think that he's mainly saying about the marketing side, so you can market also on kind of play the fear card when marketing. And yeah, we have many comments on the chat, and we need to go to the plenary, but well, here Marina is saying, I would also argue it's the perception of standards by the user. Do they find them useful, a marker of trustworthiness? Also, Freya is saying in the UK, there is a legal framework where many organizations of public interest could be required to develop by law to demonstrate they are considering climate risk. So climate risk could play a big part there. Also, regulators, bring in climate risk to other regulations. Yes. Totally. Okay, we need to close because we had 20 seconds, but it was so nice to meet you here in the breakout groups, and thank you for your participation.